Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Danny and myself are back for another video on Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, nearly 24 hours after the fight has happened. Danny, thank you for joining me. Late night last night, but quite an event. And yeah, we're back at it on the Sunday. How are things with you?
All's good, mate. Yeah, I've spent my full day today. Literally, it's quite sad. Just scrolling across Twitter, YouTube, just consuming more and more Spence and Crawford content. It's almost like I sort of don't want it to end, but yeah, all good, mate. Very, very lazy Sunday, definitely.
No, you've deserved it after what was a extremely late night, early morning yesterday. As is the case when it comes to kind of boxing, a fight happens, and already within minutes, really, people are talking about what happens next. Is this person gonna fight this person? Is he going to move up in weight? Is he maybe going to retire? We asked that question today about Errol Spence and got a mixed response. And we want to dive a little deeper. And I'm interested to get your opinion on a couple of things. First question, just Danny, what was your opinion on Errol Spence's performance last night? What went wrong?
First of all, I think you have to give full credit to Terence Crawford. He's the best fighter on the planet. I don't think you would find many boxing fans who would disagree with that. And he was as good as I've seen him in a long time. But we're here to talk about Spence, and I think I'd suspected, and I'd said in some of the preview videos that I suspected Spence was not the fighter he was. That was going back to the Ugas fight, even the Sean Porter fight, and now I'm convinced Errol Spence isn't the fighter he was. Um, I think the weight, like even Spence himself had been saying before the fight, I'll be going up to 154 after. He said in the post fight press conference, I want the rematch, but I would really want it at 154. He's massive at welterweight, and he's been a welterweight his whole career, like spanning since after he turned over. So that's a very tough weight cut. He's been making quite a lot, and I just think he's been physically depleted. You can look at the car crash, you can look at a lot of things. I think from a Spence perspective, I think you could safely say he's not the fighter he was. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it looks like that. And it would be a shame for someone to go from an elite fighter to maybe not being able to compete at the level he once was at, losing to fights he would have definitely beaten 3, 4 years ago. Errol Spence now, he made his debut in November 2012, so almost 11 years ago. He's 33 years old. His current record is 28-1, so he's had 29 fights. So that's a decent stint. I think if Errol Spence is to go on, I think he's not going to have many more fights, you'd imagine. Um, where do you think Spence goes from here, mate? There have been a few opinions sorted around today. Um, I think if you consider the amount of money he's made, especially last night, he's made tens of millions of dollars in this sport. What's gone on outside the ring? Um, he's, as you mentioned, there not the fighter he once was. And the fact that look, he last night he took it was a one-sided fight. He took a beating. I thought his face looked a mess at the end of that fight. And there is a shout and a debate to say, should he be fighting again, or should he perhaps call it quits? Now that he has passed his best and he's gone into the sport and achieved a hell of a lot. Give me your take on what Errol Spence should do next.
What he should do and what I think he will do are two very different things. I think he will continue. I think that rematch could happen. Crawford, I didn't actually see this last night, but Crawford even said at the post-fight press conference he'd be happy enough to go up to 154. I don't think he particularly enjoys cutting down to welterweight. Not that any fighter enjoys cutting weight, but I would like to see Errol Spence retire. I think, as you say, he's made tens of millions of dollars from the sport. You would imagine more than enough to live a very comfortable life. And it was just when I saw on Twitter today a video of how Spence used to be like 5 years ago, his speech, even just his overall energy and the way he was, not even just in fight week, because people can use, oh, he's cutting weight, he's a bit more tired then, but even in like the accessible areas stuff that Showtime do, he's not the same man. He's really not. And for that sort of physical decline and visible decline in your speech to happen from 28 to 33 is like quite concerning. And that, as you say, it was a beating he took last night. Not to be disrespectful, it was, and like I would worry about the state he'll be in his 40s and 50s, even now, to be honest, but especially if he has any more fights like that. The car crash, I think, took a massive part out of him. People forget he's had orbitable surgery, and I would like to see if you asked a doctor if they think Errol Spence should still fight, what they would say.
Yeah, I think it wasn't pretty last night, as you mentioned. I think a lot of people have noticed a difference, and there seemed to be a concern pre-fight about Errol Spence from a lot of people. And now it feels that we put this tweet out post-fight, and a lot of people don't like it for whatever reason. So it's a strange one, and we'll see what's. But I think surely Spence will have a word with himself, have a word with people close around him, and surely it must get brought up. In terms of what happens next, Danny, if Spence is to fight on, um, the rumors about this rematch happening before the end of the year. Do you think that's likely?
It's a scary thought for Spence to jump straight back in with Crawford after that in what,
Yeah,
5 months,
4 months. Yeah,
6 months.
yeah,
Like you wonder about, and the thing is, how big is that rematch after that? That's a tough sell, even at 154. I can't see any way it would go differently. And like the people around you, like, do they really believe he's got a chance of turning that over just at £7 extra? Or is it this case where I'm not sure how big an entourage Spence has or whatever, but there's people eating off him and like I will make another payday out of him. Yeah, it's I don't think he should be fighting Terence Crawford again. I don't see a fight going any differently. Like if you would not believe, even inside of the ring and outside of the ring, the way they speak and the way they fight, that Crawford was older than Spence. Like chalk and cheese.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely. I think it's the idea of Spence being in the ring and kind of, as you mentioned, taking another beating. He's it's different. I think obviously you finish a fight, the adrenaline's pumping, you're going to say certain things, and I just wonder a couple of days later what the thought will be. Obviously, when you get to 20, 25, 30, and you lose for the first time, you're desperate for that rematch, but sometimes it's not the best option.
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with you, Danny. I just think I've always been a fan of boxers retiring young, getting in and getting out, getting in and getting out of the sport. There's nothing wrong with retiring at the age of 33. I'd love to retire at the age of 33, and that's not going to happen. Um, I think like the fighter that I think of in this situation is George Groves. Got into
Yeah.
the ring kind of towards the end of his career, had some injuries. Maybe wasn't the fighter he was. Had some quite bad injuries. Obviously, had that shoulder injury against that he sustained in the Eubank Junior fight, but still made a lot of money. Won a world title. Boxed at Wembley Stadium, of course, and he retired at the age of 30. And I'm just like, fair play to him. Like you've retired at the age of 30, having achieved everything. And yeah, you could have fought on, but anybody could fight on. And that's an example of, I don't want to say, how to do it, and everyone kind of should look up to Groves, but I just think it's such a good example of retiring young and early and at the right time rather than going back and getting more beaten up as well, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add at all in terms of what you think Spence might do next?
Yeah, like as a fighter, he'll have the mentality because when they suffer a loss, like you hear about people speak about it, like they'll delude themselves and they'll say, "Oh, this is why," and if I just fix this or whatever. So he'll probably want that rematch and have the idea, right? If I can risk, if it happens again, it happens again. But like once you've had as long a career as he's had, and in my opinion, you're already showing signs of potential cognitive decline that he's showing. Like one extra fight can be really like catastrophic, like especially if it was of the nature that the Crawford one was. So I just would like to echo that. Like I do hope he retires. I've really like Errol Spence. Love watching him fight from the Kelbrook fight right through to now. And I think a lot of people assumed that we were saying he should retire because he's lost to Crawford and he's finished and he's useless, which I don't know how people reach that assumption. Like the lack of thinking people must do to jump to that conclusion is honestly laughable. But from a point of pure concern, I would like to see him retire. I don't think he's got anything left to prove.
Yeah, I think maybe some people hadn't quite woken up yet from what was a long night for all of us. But yeah, we'll move on. Danny, been good to speak about this with you. We'll see what happens with Spence. Will he retire? Will he fight Crawford? Will he maybe continue to fight on but go down a different route and try and win a world title at 154? We shall see. But yeah, thank you for your time. I'll catch up with you again soon.
Cheers, mate. Thanks.